welcome to Black Economics TV. We have with us today Dwight Maxwell. He's going to be talking to us about his career in education and also a book that he's written. He feels will give more solutions to improving the educational attainment of all students, including Black students. So welcome, Dwight. Thank you for being here.
Thank
Can you
you.
tell us about your role now? What do you currently doing? Are you lecturing? Are you teaching? Are you in education? Tell us.
All right. Good afternoon, or good evening, Don. Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here. I am currently a lecturer of English language and literature at Sandwell College. I'm in the A-level campus, so we call that Central St. Michael's College. Okay, so that's a branch of the Sandwell College institution, which is quite large, actually. There's a
And we must let people know that Sandwell is in Birmingham, yeah?
Sandwell's in Birmingham, United Kingdom. Yes. So yeah, that's my current role, and yeah, I've been with that college now for this is my second year there.
Okay, okay. So how are your students? Are they demonstrative in terms of their opinions? Do you have good debates?
Yes, we have excellent debates. I mean, we have students from all walks of life. We have LGBTQI students. We have what do you call it? We have students from all over the world. We have students from the Philippines. We have students from Africa. We have students from the Caribbean. We have students from the United Kingdom. We have students, you can, anywhere in the world you can think of, Poland, wherever, different parts of East Asia and Eastern Europe. So we have a lot of students from all over the world. It's a very diverse community, and hence the discussions are quite lively because it's bringing in all those different backgrounds into the classroom discussions. It really makes it quite interesting, and you have to be nimble as a lecturer in order to make sure you're looking after everybody's interest.
Yes, understood. All right. What's your background yourself? Where are you from? Your family background?
That's a good question. I was born in Jamaica. I'm an island man. Okay, I was born in Jamaica. I was lived in Jamaica till I was 16 years old. And then I moved to the United States. My mother, sent for us. She was the first one to leave. And you know how it goes. Parents leave you, with relatives, or you're bored. You could be boarding. At one point, I was boarding. And then, yeah, parents sent for us when I was 16. Finish off my high school in the USA. We went to New York. That's where I grew up in New York. So I got this accent. Yeah, so I got New
Yeah,
York.
I noticed.
Yeah. I also got a British accent because I lived here for 18 years. So I've got a hodgepodge of accents, which kind of talks about my journey when you listen to my accents. So yes, yeah, I grew up in New York City. I did my BA in New York. So I graduated from Martin Luther King High School, and I received scholarships, which I then attended Hobart and William Smith colleges, upstate New York, about an hour from Buffalo. And if you've heard of Buffalo, New York, which is about an hour from Canada. And I went to school up there. That was really good. It was very how would you put it? Very rural. We were on the Finger Lakes. I studied English and drama as well as psychology when I was went up for my BA. And then after that, I returned to the city. This was like about 8 hours from the city of New York, by bus, probably about 6 hours by car. It's quite a long journey from home. Returned to New York and did my graduate school at NYU University, which is a top university in the country. I would, compared to it's not, I think it's considered probably close to Ivy League, or like Ivy League. Did my master's there in English language and creative writing, with some American studies involved. So it was a very eclectic degree. At which point also I began teaching. When I finished my BA and went back to my old high school, my teachers were like, "Oh, you got to teach. You have to become a teacher." So that's how I got into teaching. Is basically my old teachers saying to me, "Oh, be a teacher." They kind of like dragged me into teaching. I was
Okay.
Yeah, I want
They
to say.
saw something in you, how you held your audience transfixed, yeah?
I guess so. I don't know, They all say to me, come on, man, you need to teach. So, in fact, I didn't even know what was happening. I was just shoved into a classroom and all the paperwork was done for me. Next thing you know, I'm on the course to become a teacher. And that was fun. That was interesting, being a young teacher, about 24 years old. So that was a very interesting because of course I'm not far in age from the actual students themselves. So that was very interesting at that time. So I taught in New York for about 10 years.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
yeah, in different capacities. And then when I met my partner, my wife, who's from England, who's from Birmingham, I decided it comes to a point where we're dating long distance, and it was just like, okay, well, some make a
Oh,
move. You know how it goes.
yeah.
Somebody's got to make a move, and I was a brave one. All right.
Mm,
I think New York scared her. So I moved because New York
mm.
is fast paced, isn't it? She's coming from West Brom. And also, whilst when I met her, I'd actually taken a sabbatical from teaching, which was right after 9/11, when I actually came to Nigeria to present a paper on how to combat AIDS and HIV using literacy.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, that was good. But it was back in the day. And
Mm.
I was invited to do it. So I was hanging out with UNESCO and different people and government officials in Nigeria. And that was fun and very informative. And then I went back to the US. And, when my wife proposed to my wife, and then I moved over here
Mm.
uh, to the UK. And that's the journey. So I've been in the UK, like, I got hooked to the UK.
Well, welcome to the
So,
UK. I hope you're
yeah,
enjoying
yeah.
it.
Yeah, it's good. It's a calm environment compared to what I'm used to. So that's probably one of the reasons why I'm here for so long. Um,
Okay.
yeah.
So, really, you're able to compare educational progress and systems in Jamaica, in New York,
Mhm.
and the UK.
Absolutely.
Tell me, what have you noticed?
Well, the thing that stands out to me more than anything else, when you look at the results tables, one of the things you notice across the board is that in the United States and I can only speak for the state of New York, but I know that in other states it's the same. And in the UK, traditionally, unfortunately, Black Caribbean students have often been at the bottom of the ladder in terms of results.
Hmm.
So you'll look at the results table and you'll see that you have the top of that is usually East Asians. And when we talk about East Asians, we're talking about Chinese, Japanese students. And then when we talk about South Asians, we're talking about Indians, and we're talking about perhaps Pakistani, but not really. They don't score as well as Indians. So what we see is that the Chinese are leading. They're on the top of the results table. So when it comes to GCSEs, they're at the top. They score like in the 90 percentile in comparison to Asians. They do better than South Asians. And then you have below them, you've got the South, the whites come right underneath Asians. So whites in the UK don't do as well as South or East Asians. They're up there in terms of results, but they've consistently done better. All three groups have consistently done better than blacks. So you have to ask yourself, like, why is it that they do better than blacks consistently? And we're talking since the Windrush. And if you remember that book that was written by Bernard Cord called How the West Indian Child Was Made Educational Subnormal in the British System. And that's talking about how black children were sort of given the status when the Windrush occurred, when the Windrush generation came to England, where they were sort of put in the schools for the subnormal. I don't know if you remember
Mm,
those schools.
mm,
And so that really prevented a lot of black children or young people from actually getting into middle class professions and middle class jobs and middle class, to move up into the middle class because they were subjected or they weren't allowed to do O levels and things like that, and kept out of that because of that stigma. So what we're looking at from since the early 70s, late 60s in the United Kingdom, the result tables have always shown a Black Caribbean, especially Nigerians tend to do better and Africans in general tend to do better, especially better than Black Caribbean, okay, or African Caribbean kids. It's the same thing in the United States where at the very top of the table, we have Chinese students, Japanese students, and your South Asians who are dominating the education field over there. So we look at Harvard, for example, the acceptance rate in Harvard. You will see that East Asians dominate. East and South Asian dominate in terms of enrollment. They are the number one. I think they make up about nearly 50% of Harvard's population student body, so which is a very, very big number. And even just the other day, they sued the Supreme Court, which for the affirmative action law that said that all universities and colleges had to put aside a certain amount of places for Black and other minority ethnic groups. It was primarily done for Black people during the Civil Rights Movement because of Martin Luther King. That was one of his legacy, Martin Luther King legacy. But that legacy was destroyed by the Asian community in league with I forgot the name of the man right now off the top of my head, who's also sued some sisters just recently, Black American women who created the Fearless Fund. I don't know if you heard of the Fearless Fund, and which was designed to help Black women get into business and give finance their business, dreams and goals and etc. That was close the door for me, Dwayne. That was actually the Supreme Court actually agreed. It wasn't the Supreme Court; it was a local court, a state court that actually agreed with this particular guy whose name I can't remember, who sued these sisters. So what we're looking at is that traditionally, there has been Black children have traditionally scored lower on all standardized tests in comparison to their white and Asian counterparts, whether they're East or South Asian. So you have to ask yourself, why historically we know about Black inventors, we know about all the amazing things that Black people have contributed to civilization, including the pyramids and all of this. So why is it that in today's world, we see Black children not doing as well? Shouldn't the result tables show all students, regardless of race, achieving the same results if they're getting the same quality of education? And that's where this book was born. Not just about grades, it's about culture. And I don't know this. Yeah, so this book does the research on that, and it looks at what are some of the reasons why, from my experience working in New York and seeing the dropout rate in New York was ridiculous. The amount of Black students that were dropping out of education.
Yes, I hear that quite a high number don't even graduate from high school.
Exactly. And if you go to Chicago, it's even higher. If you go to, Baltimore, if you go to a lot of these different states, I mean, I think it's even going to get worse. If Trump gets into power, we don't know where this will go, because he's going to cut funding, like he's going to cut funding to free school meal, which is something that we enjoy here in the UK, and that it's already in place in the US, but Trump wants to cut that. He wants to cut all the benefits that poor people get in order to go send their kids to school. So this is the issue that I'm addressing in his book, and I think it's really apt that we deal with this right now, because
You know
it's
what? I'm actually surprised that there hasn't been improvements over the years because I remember these kind of figures in the 90s. You know, we now 2024 and look back at the 2023 results,
Mhm.
it still bears out what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at, I'll give you an example. Um, if you when you look at the data of how of the results, you see that the performance trends by ethnic groups in England 2004 to 2000 to 2018, five A stars, five GCSE A star to C, including English and maths. You will see that you look at the different groups that are depicted here. So we have Black Caribbean, Black African, Indian, Pakistani, Chinese, white British, sorry, and white other. We see that Chinese are way ahead. They're at the top. They're going up to the 90 percentile, where 90% of them are getting A star to C grades.
Mm,
5 A star to C grades. Now,
mm,
when you look at the Black Caribbean, we're at the bottom. I don't know if you can see this chart.
mm,
So yeah, the Black Caribbean are at the very bottom of the chart, you
mm,
know? So then you have white British who are sort of in between. So I'd rather Black Caribbean being in between than consistently at the bottom.
mm,
So we have to ask ourselves, why is it that Black Caribbean are consistently, and African American? Now we know that Nigerians are doing better. Not
mm,
all Nigerians, particularly the Igbo
mm.
Nigerians. All
Oh,
right.
really?
Yeah, yeah. Very interesting dynamic. It's really worth studying. Okay.
Mm,
So as a teacher in the school system for 30 years, because I started teaching in 1995 in New York. That same year I came out of university, out of college, what you guys call my college is your university. Same time when I came out of college, I started to teach that same year, that September, when my teachers dragged me into teaching into the classroom. And I've been in there ever since. And some of the things I've noticed is just the lack of faith that Black students have in the school system, for one. It's the same thing here in the UK. If you look at the Windrush generation, for example, and you look at the schools for the subnormal that Black young kids were shoved into, misdiagnosed and put in there, you had about those schools. I think we were overly represented in those schools, looking at about 25% of the student population nationwide was Black students who had just come to the country,
mm,
right? So or was just born here, maybe first generation. But what happened was, after Bernard Cord's amazing report, which rocked the whole country, and Parliament had to address this, one of the things that came out as a result of that is the Saturday school, or the supplementary Black schools. It was Black and British people that created supplementary schools. It wasn't
yeah,
Asian, it wasn't
yeah.
white, it was Black British people who created that.
Mm,
And it was designed for intervention purposes, was
yeah.
designed to because of the fact that our kids were being put in those schools, but not only that, the just the academic achievements was really low. So basically, what happened when the Saturday schools came into place, we saw a remarkable improvement in the attainment of Black kids in
Yeah.
the public school. That one day out of the week, that Saturday, where and I used to run one of those schools in Birmingham,
Mm,
right? And that one Saturday, where those kids would go and spend that day, where they would learn about their history, they would learn about their culture, and they would be treated completely different than when they were in the public school system. They were more at ease, more relaxed in an environment where they were being taught by other Black staff or Black teachers who understood their intersectionality. And when we talk about intersectionality, we're talking about all of the things that come together to make them who they are. So
Mm,
we have to look at their past. We have to look at what happened, how they were impacted by slavery, how they were impacted by colonization. How they were, it's not them that went through it, but what we see is that I don't have to go through something myself to actually to experience trauma. If my parents are traumatized, then what are they going to do to me?
mm,
How is their trauma going to be passed on to me? And
mm,
if they're not educated about how to deal with the trauma, how can that be passed on? And not only that, if you live in a society that keep reminding you that you're inferior, that your culture is inferior, that you never contributed anything to society. And when you sit in that classroom, you never see any reflection of yourself in any of the text. And if you do, it's always something, a book like Of Mice and Men, where the character Crooks, who lives in the barn, right, kicked by a horse in his back of a crooked, frame, is being called the N-word and is being threatened with lynching. So if that's, why would I want to identify with that?
yeah,
As a
yeah.
young
I
student.
remember coming
Yeah.
across that book once, that a student was studying that as part of a GCSE text. I remember being quite shocked that this was part of their text, you know? It's
Indeed.
almost as if you're indoctrinating hundreds of thousands of young people around the country because they're all studying that same text and they're thinking, oh, yeah,
Yeah.
maybe this is all right to do this, you know?
It was a staple in former GCSE. They got rid of it with what's his name? What's the name of the MP? I can't remember the member of parliament
Was it
who
Gove?
Yeah, Michael Gove said, like, we're going to focus on British authors and not on, because, there was a heavy focus on some American authors. But I personally got that book banned. I'm not ashamed to say it. In a school that I worked at, Hollyhead School, the English department wanted to teach it, and they wanted to teach it to year nine. And I said, you know what, that book has caused a lot of trauma for a lot of Black kids. I remember one time my financial advisor saying to me that his daughter, he had to go down to the school because his daughter was bawling. She didn't like the fact that they were reading that book and this teacher was using the
Oh,
N-word.
oh my
You know
goodness.
what I mean? So a lot of students, there was another student who complained about it just recently. The BBC did an expose on it, where
Really?
I'm going to read that to you from a book if you'll allow me to do so.
Sure, sure.
Okay, in chapter one of my book, I talk about the ESN schools, School for the Educationally Subnormal. And in there as well, I talked about the recent um, article that came out recently where a young girl up in, I think it was Scotland, no, sorry, Ireland, where she was had to read that book in class and how it traumatized her. And she wasn't even African Caribbean; she was from the continent.
Mm,
You know what I'm saying? So her experience is different. She's
mhm,
not, you know what I mean? I so I wrote here. I've seen Black students slump angrily in their seats as Crooks is reduced to the N-word by Curly's wife, as she threatens to have him hung from a tree for speaking out of turn. Once, my year nines reported to me that a white colleague had used the N-word whilst talking about the book, and they made it clear to me that they believe she deliberately used the word to offend them, using the
mm,
book as a license. They had been rebelling against the text all term, but the teacher continued to teach the text, ignoring her students' protests.
mm,
I've had parents phone me up to complain about Steinbeck's masterpiece, reporting that their child had come home in tears after being forced to read the N-word in class. I cringed as a teacher of African descent as I was forced to read the heated argument between the lonely, isolated character of Crooks and the nameless female character, known only as Curly's wife, an allegorical character used by Steinbeck to exemplify women's dependency on men in a patriarchal society.
mm,
And, so that's just an example of, how when you're teaching children and you're not aware of their intersectionality, how you can actually disempower them.
Yeah.
by the text that you are introducing to them. So, in exploring the intricate realm of racial dynamics, the contentious issue of the N word emerges as a subject that seemed to elude the attention of many white individuals. Curiously, despite its widespread offense and derogatory nature among Black communities across the globe, this problematic epithet is often overlooked. Rooted in harmful stereotype, it serves as a tool to alienate, vilify, and dehumanize Black individuals, painting them as ignorant, violent, super predators, and beyond human. By delving into John Steinbeck's utilization of this loaded and racist trope and what it signifies in our society, one can discern how the essence of white privilege is blind to the pain it inflicts on those who must bear the brunt of it. As
Yeah.
a as a white male, Steinbeck's employment of such language, normalized during America's bigoted past, embodies the epitome of privilege.
Okay, so this book was written in which year then? The
Right. The Steinbeck
Steinbeck book.
book, that was written in Joseph Steinbeck, that book was written in, I believe, right after the Great Depression,
Oh, right.
which was 1932 or
All right.
19,
So that was even before the civil rights era.
yeah, long before the Civil Rights era.
Yeah, yeah.
So so you can look at it within the context, but what we're looking at, the book needs to be read to a mature audience. It needs to be a university level text
Yeah.
where people who are more, young people are more grounded, more, they're able to deal with that on a different level. And you have to
Mm,
even prepare them before you bring that book in.
mm,
And I know that, yes, some of them do use that N-word among themselves, but you know how they react when a white person uses the N-word,
yeah, yeah.
right? So it's a very weird, kind of conundrum, if you know what I'm saying.
But I think this situation also brings up the fact that if, for instance, a history teacher is teaching about slavery, the Black kids in the class can also have a similar traumatic experience because it's embarrassing to know that your people were forcibly taken, many of them killed, the cruelty they existed even before they got to America or the Caribbean, and then how they had to work for no money as
Mm-hmm.
slaves for hundreds of years, and to know that this is your ancestors. Yeah, it's embarrassing for Black students, and I don't think it's any easier for white students, which is probably why America's banned parts of America banned certain history texts because they don't want the white people to feel any kind of guilt. And
Mm-hmm.
Black people, though we understand we must know about our history, it's not fun for us either, to be honest. And even as a teacher, you know, I'm not sure that teachers enjoy teaching that part of history. There's some history is actually painful,
I
you know.
agree. I mean, it's not easy. And, uh, one of the points I made in the book is that instead of teaching about slavery all the time, which is a very small part of Black history, there's so much more. But if the teachers are not trained, if the curriculum of the university is not giving them the history of Africa before slavery, you know
Mm,
what I mean? Or even focusing on the achievements of Africans after slavery,
mm,
then, these people are going there and all they do is talk about slavery and it's depressing.
mm.
Remember, that was what the curriculum, remember when you were in school, when I was in school, whenever it came to history, it was about, and it had to do with Black people, had to do with slavery.
Hmm.
They
Yeah, I
didn't
think
celebrate
that's
it.
changed a bit though. I think
Yeah.
Black History Month in particular is more celebrating achievements rather than
Yeah, Black History
being,
Month itself. I
yeah.
mean, like, I've been involved with creating programs for Black History Month, and I'm actually been asked to do the one that's coming up for students at Central St. Michael's, and that's to invite everybody and make everyone feel included in celebrating Black history and
Hmm.
culture. And I think that's one of the things that we're looking at is what is on the GCSEs to do with Black history. So we see there definitely going to be slavery on there. It's still on the curriculum. It's
Is it
still,
really?
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's
Mm-hmm.
part of the curriculum. And and also, but what they may talk about now, they bring in is a civil rights movement. So that's a really good thing to teach because it's about human rights and it's about overcoming oppression and racism. You know what I'm saying? That's a beautiful image right there.
Mm-hmm.
So my thing is that, we need to, and when I do my presentations, I talk about ancient Egypt, ancient Ethiopia, Aksum and Kush and Meroe, and all
Mm-hmm.
these ancient African civilizations.
Mm-hmm.
Samunsa, the Timbuktu Library, the University of Timbuktu, all of this great history that is out there about Africa. Africa is where history began.
Yeah. I've got to say, though, that despite the fact that our young people aren't doing as well as they should be in school, some of them are developing later and becoming very good businessmen and women, very good teachers, very good professionals, founders, and some of them are getting good jobs. But it's almost as if there's a lost 2 or 3 or 4 years
Hmm.
where somehow they weren't as focused as they should be in school. So the grades were lower than others, but then some of them start to catch up later on.
Yeah, that's
What do you
true.
think?
Yeah, my research showed that too because there's a lot of different things that occurs. There's a book written by a guy called um I think it's something like successful at primary and I forgot and failing at secondary. I think that's the title of the book. And he's talking about how Black students really do well in primary school, but later on in secondary school, things just seem to go weird for them.
Hmm.
And I think, and you make a good point, there's a high dropout rate of Black students at university as well,
Hmm.
okay, in this country.
Yes, yeah.
What we got to look at, the reality is, yes, some of them do catch up later. But overall, if you look at the Asian population and the white population, who have stronger retention, right? Black people are doing okay here, but they're still economically better off than we are and as a whole. And that's,
Hmm.
Asian people, for example, Asian communities push their students, their children into academic professions.
Yeah.
So if you go to the NHS, you will see Asian doctors from here till till the next century. There's the NHS. I've got figures in my book about the NHS. They really
Hmm.
show you the large amount of, and I'm not talking about low end jobs. I'm talking about high end jobs.
Hmm.
Okay. So, even the white people make up like a working force in the NHS. Yes, some of them are in leadership. Many of them are up there. And I don't think many of them are up there because of the fact that they're smarter or more skilled, but they're there because of nepotism and all these kind of things and, whatever. But when you look at, the evidence is that Black people are being pushed into more lower end professions. So
Hmm.
if you don't have the sevens and eight to go to a good university like Oxford and Cambridge, and if you don't have the ability to sustain a study, listen, okay, let's be real. What is it that the Black community really needs? We need more doctors, we need more lawyers, we need more teachers, we need more engineers. All of these things are a profession. We don't need no more athletes or more singers. You know what I mean? So the thing is that's where our children often are, going towards those kind of professions, or they instinctively or they aim lower for lower professions. And some, why are they aiming? And when you look at, my wife works in the career field, she's a career advisor and she's pretty much at the same college I am at. So she'll come home and she'll tell me all these different things that's going on, different students who are coming. We have a large amount of African, Caribbean, and Africans now because they're like second generation Africans here now, and they're falling into that same trap. They're falling into
Really?
that same cycle. So they're showing up to college with threes and fours and twos. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? You can't put them on an A-level course. We're talking about, okay, so If you look at A-level courses, what you're looking at there, anybody who gets on an A-level course is probably going to be middle class and upper middle class. Anybody who's doing B.Tech, I'm not saying you can't make it with B.Tech, right? And that you can't get up there, but you're more likely to be on the lower spectrum of the middle class or working class. You know what I'm saying? Yes, Black people will work their way up professions in later years and things like that. That does happen. But what we want to look at is the amount of people, of young people, who go into professions that actually make a difference. What they call it in Britain when I was moving here, highly skilled migrant workers.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think
So,
this means that we need to start brainwashing our kids from young
to
to aim higher, to work harder, to
believe
use
in
their
themselves.
time better because they
Yeah.
waste so much time when they're teenagers, you know? Um, and if parents aren't behind the children to always be encouraging them to be reading the book or doing some schoolwork, even if work hasn't been set by the teacher, you know, it is possible that we are not, as parents, putting in as much effort as we should do. Now, I also know that Chinese and Asians spend a lot of money on tutors.
Absolutely.
Maybe Black parents aren't seeing that need, or
I agree with
perhaps
that.
a number cannot afford it.
Yeah.
And also, if you have parents who are on the lower rung of middle class and they're working really hard for their company, sometimes unrewarded, and they're finding that it's the white person who's coming along, probably not as experienced as them, who's getting the promotions. You're getting the black person working doubly hard overtime and not having that much time to spend with the children,
Absolutely.
you know,
There's a
through
lot of variables.
economics, basically.
Yeah, there's a lot of variables, but as you said, the thing you said earlier is what I'm kind of saying in my book, which is um, what I say in the book, because the book is called "It's Not Just About Grades, It's About Culture." And what I've found out from my research is that the reason why South Asian and East Asians do so well, they have a culture that reinforces education. They have a culture that reinforces hard work. They have a culture that rewards hard work. You know what I mean? I used to run my own tutoring company, and I had Chinese students. And I give you an example. I had a Chinese boy once, and he was lovely, right? Very disciplined, quiet kid. He was going to King Edward's Grammar, right? On results day, his mom called me up and she said, you know what, Mr. Maxwell, I don't know where I went wrong. She was excited. And she's like, you know what? She was excited, but at the same time, she said, I don't know where I went wrong because she hadn't told me the results yet. And I'm like, what do you mean? She said, I believe I can't remember his name, but I'm going to say James. She's like, James got 6 A's and, you know, 5 A's, 3 A stars and 1 B. And I was like, what? She said, yeah, he got a B. And I was like, okay, I said to her, that's a pretty good results there. And I think the B was in I think it was in art and design or something like that. And she's like, I'm gonna ask for a remark. You
What?
know, it's on it. Yeah, 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 yeah. Right. So what we're looking at here is, the expectations are up here, man. You should read the book Battle Hymn of a Tiger Mom, right? Written by a Yale professor, okay, about how she raised her Chinese daughters. They're half Chinese, half Jewish. And they decided, she and her husband, who's white Jewish, decided to raise the girls as Jewish, but she said the agreement was that they were going to have Chinese culture, right? And both her daughters are, one is a concert pianist and one is a violinist, right? But what we got to look at, I'm talking about top class, top tier, okay? But what we got to look at is like how she raised those daughters. That book is amazing. I quote it in my book. They weren't allowed to bring nothing home less than an A. And if they got a B, She would sit down with them for hours over that same problem, whatever math sum or problem, as they call in US, that she got wrong. They would work it until that became flawless for them. They weren't allowed to have sleepovers. They weren't allowed to participate in the school play. Anything that was frivolous.
Wow.
Understand me? It was discipline. They would, when they went on holiday, she would make sure she chose a hotel that had a piano in the lobby so the child could continue to practice.
Okay, okay.
Now, we have to get into our minds where, you know, as a teacher for so many years, I see the result. I used to run my own tuition company. So I see them coming in. I see Indians sending their kids to me as well. And I see, like, when I look at my Chinese kids' schedule for the week, when they want me to do extra tuition or whatever, you know, the child's doing piano lesson, they're doing maybe they're doing a karate lesson, they're doing, language lesson. I know on Saturdays they used to come to me, but they would, after they finish with me, they're off to Chinese school where they're learning Mandarin and Cantonese and learning about their culture. When it comes with my Asian students, the same thing. When I used to teach in Sparkbrook and other places, there are lots of Asian students who love me. They love me, you know. And the thing about it is that they would leave school, and then when I'm heading home, I see them going into the mosque. I see them going into the Gujarat. I see them putting on their traditional clothes. I see them, you know what I mean? So when we look at our kids, and the thing is, what I'm arguing is that white kids are in their environment. They're in their ethos. They're in their, this is their culture, right? But they don't even perform as well as South Asians and East Asians. So their culture is pretty much, you could say, if you want to use inferior, compared to South Asians and East Asian people. Who within their culture, they have such accountability that a child understands very clearly from very early that mediocrity is not accepted. Okay, so that kind of level is no different. If you're using Christianity right, you can teach that to your child and get them to elevate, because that's the same kind of teaching that Christ is giving people. You have to be better. You have to work hard. You have to, you have to achieve your best. You know what I mean? So I think you're right. When you look at the parents and what they have to go through in terms of the day job, in terms of the work that they have to do, and then come home and work with their kids, it's very difficult. And spending time with your kid, making sure your kid is working, making sure, and then you have the single parenting going on as well. And that's, in most Chinese families and Indian families, it's a nuclear family. In fact, it goes beyond nuclear. It's a extended family.
Yeah, because you have the two parents and the grandparents.
And
Yeah.
you got the grandparents, and sometimes you got uncles and aunts living with you and all of that. So you have a lot of people scrutinizing you. You know what I mean? And making sure you're great. You know how many, like, okay, we're doing enrollment at CSM, and we have like half of the students who come for enrollment wants to do medicine. And most of them, the majority of them are Asians. They want to do medicine. Even if they don't have the grades, they want to do medicine. And if you tell them you can't do medicine because you didn't get A's, or whatever, I go, what else can I do? There's another way I can get around to it, this and that, They're all, it's not a genetic difference. It is a cultural difference. Once you understand that, then you can make the necessary changes in order to assist the child to do well. So you have to make sure your child, the most important thing you can do for your child before you send him out of that house in the morning, as far as my research shows, is to boost their confidence level. If they are secure in their identity, if they are proud of their culture, if they see their culture as something that is amazing, if they are proud of who they are, when they go into that classroom, there's nothing a teacher can do that will have impact on them. But then, of course, you have to have that nexus at home, that community where everything that you're teaching that child is reinforced. And we
Yes, I totally agree. I mean, if I can just share my own experience, I have two daughters, and I was starting to teach them to read and do maths before they could even talk properly. So before they reached the school, they could do all of that.
There you go.
I remember driving in a car with some friends to go down to Brighton for a convention once, and my 5-year-old was in the car, and she was reading this book, which would normally be for like 15-year-olds,
Yeah, yeah.
and the people,
Mm.
my friends who were in the car, they were like, "Wow, how come she can read like that? And she's so young." It's just something that I'd done from early, and that stuck with them because it meant that they enjoyed books. I have books galore in my house, over 1,000 books. And
Mm.
I just felt that it's a way to a better life.
It
You've heard the
is.
term that if you read 1,000 books, you would have lived 1,000 lives. Well, if you don't read, you've only lived your own boring life. You've got to know what's going on in the world. And so, yeah, they both went to university, both did very well, both in really good jobs now. And it comes from, I think it stems from the fact that I always encouraged them to read, taught them to read and write and do maths very young, made it a game. Okay, the first one responded really well to that. The second one, after a while, didn't like the game, you know. But children grow up different. But she
Mhm.
understood the ethos of what needed to happen within the home. So she even said to me the other
Absolutely.
day, because she's in her 20s now, she even said, "Yeah, I had to make sure I got my maths because in this house you're just not allowed to not be good at maths.
Yeah.
And it's
That
not like it's something that I would bash over the head with, but the way that we talked, how we talked about education at home and reading and achieving, I think that does stick with students. And I think also the company that they keep, if you have a stronger culture and discipline and you help them to experience different things, a number of things that you can have your child experience that other children are not experiencing.
I
Because
agree.
sometimes when they
Mhm.
tell people what they've done, sometimes when they were younger, other children are like, "Oh, I've never done that. Oh, I've never been there." You know.
That is
So
it.
you're quite right about the culture. The fact that you go to museums, art galleries, theatre.
Yes.
You
Yes.
take them traveling, and you don't
Mhm.
even have to be traveling far.
Mm-mm.
Even the fact that
Within the
in the
country.
summer
Yeah.
you're taking them
Mm.
somewhere where they're going to learn something new, and
But
you
there are
enroll them,
investment.
you
There,
enroll
there,
them for different experiences. It makes a difference.
you
So
got to
I
look at
think
it
what
from.
you are trying to do is probably form a groundswell of change within the lives of Black homes so they can start from at home. So it's good that we're talking about this book, and I would encourage people to get your book. Do you have an audio version of it?
We are still in the publications phase because this is a prototype. You can
Oh, so
see.
it's not out yet. When does it
No,
come out then?
it's going to come out. I'm with this publishing house called Austin and Macaulay. So basically, they're in the process now of like going through the book, editing it, and all that stuff. So I'm anticipating this book's going to be live early next year.
Okay.
So yeah, so it's not live yet, but it's good that we get to promote it. Good that we get to talk about it and to share, that this thing's coming out. I think I wrote it as a compendium to Black parents, but also to white teachers or any other teacher who wants to really get an angle around why, historically, we're seeing Black children underperform, and you hit you hit the nail right on the head because there's a book called "Does Your Parents Make You Smarter?" or "Does Your Family Make You Smarter?" And it's written by a researcher named James Flynn. And this book is this guy's a Nobel Prize winner. Yeah, he's a Nobel Prize winner.
Mm,
Yeah,
mm,
he's an IQ specialist. He
mm,
focuses on IQ. And his result of looking, because he did a lot of IQ work in the 70s when they were saying that Black kids were inferior, they don't have the same capacity to learn as white kids and as Asian kids. And I mean, even to the when I was in universities in the 90s, there was a book that came out by Charles Murray, and I forgot the name of the other one, called The Bell Curve. And that book was about how it rated the different racial groups or ethnic groups on the, on the planet in terms of intelligence. And of course, who's at the bottom. You know what I mean? And this was a book published by Harvard. I mean, these were Harvard professors. Okay. So we have, this is the kind of thing that parents need to be aware of. But as you said rightly, if you are doing it in the home, if you got the high standards at home, the most important thing when you were teaching those kids, when you're teaching your daughters, the one thing you were instilling in them is confidence, self-belief, all of that stuff. Those are golden things. Those are golden nuggets. So when we look at South Asian, there's another book that came out by the same Amy Chu that talks about, it's called The Triple Threat. The Triple Threat. I wrote an article about that, a research article that was going to be published recently. I just needed to put the data in there, but it was accepted by a journal. They want the article, so I've got to even make some changes on this. But the triple threat talks about why it is that Asian students do better. Now, it's not just in America, it's not just the Asians that are on the top. You've got right now the very top of the income in America is not white people. It's Asians. Okay.
Well, they're CEOs of a lot of the tech companies over there, aren't they?
Exactly. Right. Well, remember, a lot of these tech companies were initially owned by white people.
Yeah.
And
Well,
then
some still are. It's just that they hired CEOs who are Asian.
There you go. There you go. So what I'm saying, those are the kind of jobs we want to slot, our kids in. You know what I mean? But you need to have the degree to get in there. You know what I mean? That's the first step through the door. They ain't gonna look at your application. Remember, when they look at application, right? They're looking first. What the first thing that's up there is your credentials, your history, your academic history, and then after that, your skills and so on. So if your thing is that you got a 2-1, and then somebody else has got a first, you know what I mean? It puts puts them ahead of you, and they say we live in a meritocracy. Right. So this is the argument that the conservatives put forward. We no longer have racism in this country. We live in a meritocracy, meaning that people are promoted based on the merits. Yeah. You get a job based on your merits, based on your hard work, based on your degree. It's those concrete things that actually opens the door for you, right? The majority of Black and brown, well, Black people in particular is who I'm talking about, young Black people, are not in the same professions or not entering into those professions, those leading high-paying roles as the Asian, South and East Asians and whites. So we have to think now, if we're if we're a meritocracy and not going up there, the people who are controlling the means of production, the people who are controlling the narrative, well, it's still the same people. So you have to think, how are you going to control the narrative? How are you going to, get your voice heard? How are you going to make a difference and so on? And it's happening. I mean, Black people are making changes every day. But this book talks about the fact that your parents, the level of your parents' knowledge, their vocabulary, down to their vocabulary, makes a huge difference when it comes to standardized testing and how well you're going to do. If your parents only have a high school education, a lot of times that does not propel you to do as well as someone whose dad is a lawyer, whose mom is a doctor. You know what I mean? Because the vocabulary and the level, you notice when you go to nursery, and if you're going to a highly exclusive one, and you hear those little white kids talking, or little Asian kids, or even little Black, it depends on who they are and who their parents are. You can tell who's coming from a home where the parents are sophisticated. That sophistication is coming through the child as well. Oh, mommy, I didn't have my carrots, one of my 5 a day this morning. Mommy, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Make sure that I've got to make sure. I was working at a school once where they were really wealthy people send their kids there. And it's just the level of the conversation that I would have with those kids was on another level. And they knew their rights, and they knew how to, and they were so confident. They came to that classroom, and it's like, seeing me as a Black teacher, they're coming in there to prove something, you know? And that's because they speak differently, and they come in there with so much confidence and gusto and all this stuff. and you have to, you got to tame them down a little bit and be like, yo, I'm the authority figure in here. And I know, you don't know, I'm not saying you don't know as much as me, because then I'll sound just like them. But it's like,
Yeah.
you break it down for them so they understand that, they understand the roles. And by the time you're done with them, they're humble. But yeah, so yeah, your parents, your family can make you smarter. And
I
when we,
think you're spending more time promoting other people's book than your book, though, Dwight.
yeah, yeah, you know what I'm saying? Let's go back to that.
But then
So
again, your book's
yeah,
not out yet. So,
no, it's not out yet, but yo, it's
what are you
soon.
doing about that? Have you got a website where you put in your blogs and sharing your theories?
I
Do you have a
used to have
website?
I used to have one, and then but then it's like at one point it just got, when I went back into work, because at one point I wasn't working for about 2 years. When I wrote this book, I had like a 2 year period off from work.
Oh
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah, I'd worked and saved up enough money where I could take time off.
Okay.
So I wrote for 2 years and got this book done.
Oh, I see.
Mean, yeah, yeah. So during that period, I had my website up and I was at all these visions, and then the money ran out. I had to go back in.
Yeah, I understand. I
Yeah,
understand.
go back into the system. So since I've been back, I haven't really looked after the website, but it's still there. I'm gonna reactivate it now that you mention it, because I've run all my articles are in LinkedIn. If LinkedIn should shut down, all my articles would just
Oh
disappear.
no, you need to have it. You definitely need to
Yeah,
have it on
I
your
need
own
to move
site. And
that.
you are obviously going to be pushing yourself as the expert in this area. Um, and from what you were saying earlier, it just reminded me of something one of my younger daughters said to me the other day. She said that when she speaks to a friend on the phone, this friend said to her, "You come up with some words sometimes. I've got to look it up. I've always got to Google that word to find out what it means." And I thought, well, hey,
Yeah, that's good. Well done, mom.
fantastic.
Well done,
She
mom.
reads a lot, and we're not talking about little tiny books. She reads a lot, these
Yeah,
big,
yeah,
thick
yeah.
books. And, obviously we have a lot of conversations too. So she said she told her, "Oh, I'll probably get that for my mom." But I don't think it's necessarily me. I think it's the fact that she's reading so much. So as you read, you pick up a wider vocabulary.
But you influenced her. And
Well, I
and
know.
and the thing is, when we look at other people and how they look at kids, remember, they look at kids differently. I mean, Black people, we need to relearn how to look at kids. Kids are not only potential energy, but also potential wealth. So when you have a child, if you raise that child right, you get to nurture their creativity, their artistic, whatever it is that you nurture within that child,
Absolutely.
and that child becomes a millionaire, they're gonna go, "Mommy and Daddy, here's a million.
Yeah,
Look at,"
exactly. Or they're going to buy you
yeah,
a house or a
they
car
buy
or
you a
something.
house, or
Absolutely.
you know what I'm saying? So children are assets,
Yeah.
people, but they're also assets. They're assets to your family. So I always say to my students when they're acting out, I was like, how are you representing your family? I always relate them back to their family. Let them see that there is a connection and that everything they do impact on that family. And we have to understand that we as parents as well, it's the same way around. And when we ignore the kids and leave them, and one of the things the point I made in this book is that parents, as Black parents, we take the child and we put them in school and we leave them there and we go, let teacher look after that. You gotta look
Mm,
after the child. And you
mm,
don't, and you feel like your hands are free, and you just go home. And when they come home, you got ask them whether or not they got homework or not. But you're not really looking at that homework,
mm,
not really asking them the right questions about what's going on at school that day. And
mm,
so that you can detect when things are off, so you can intervene and make sure that the child is back on course, or whatever you need to do to actually ensure that confidence level is always up here. Because part of success is that sense that in that book, The Triple Threat, she talks about how part of the reason why Asians are so successful is because they believe their culture is better than others.
mm, mm,
Not that they believe that they are better, they believe that their culture
mhm,
is
mhm,
better. Yeah, they
mm,
believe that what they bring to the table is superior. But at the
mhm,
same time, they have a sense of there's a sense of inferiority, in the sense that not inferiority in itself to the complex, but rather they are never satisfied with where they're at. They
mhm.
want they have this sense that they want more, but
Yeah.
not more as in greed, but rather pushing yourself to your highest potential. And the dialogue that I have with a lot of my Black students is that the first dialogue or the first conversation is not about how I think I'm great or fantastic. It's, oh, I'm down here. I'm not feeling too good. I'm not feeling too great. I'm struggling. My time management is awful. I'm off on this. I'm off on, you know what I mean? There's all of that negativity because the lack of not the lack of discipline, but the lack of guidance and the lack of reinforcement that you need. I mean, that's why the African parable, it takes a village to raise a child, is so significant. Because what we tend to think is that we can do it on our own, but not realizing that we need a collective, we need a village, we need a community of like-minded people to make sure that those children are the best that they can possibly be.
So if you are saying that culture is a very important part of the Black child's education, how would that demonstrate itself practically?
Very good question. I think that, to me, this is why in this book, if you look at the cover, one of the things you see are Adinkra symbols. Jinyame, Sankofa, you know what I mean? They're all here. This one is called Denkiem, right?
It's a very good cover, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. And there's
Fantastic.
some
Really
guy on
good.
there. Look at that handsome guy on there. But the
Who's
whole
that there? It's not you, is it?
So guess what I did? I put lesson plans in the book.
Ooh,
Yeah,
look at
lesson plans in the book. Yeah, for parents.
And there's teachers.
Yeah, and teachers. And there's affirmations in the book. So what I've done is I've given parents a simple way to begin. And that is to start using, and I'm making a set of cards to go with this book. Right? And that set of cards is, you can sit down with your child in the living room and just pick up one of these cards and go, okay, so this card is from the Akan people, and this is something they live by, and they're ancient people, and this is where you're descended from. And this card means, Sankofa mean, looking back as you move forward. So not forgetting your past. As in fact, you're learning from the past as you walk ahead. And how can we inculcate that in our lives? Yeah, how can we bring that in? Right? And talk to them about little things like that. And those kind of reasoning really ground your kids. And kids love that. You know what they love more than academics? This kind of talk. You know what I mean? They love that kind of talk. They love it. My little kid love it. My son loves it. When I show this to my students, they all go crazy over it as well. It's over 300 pages in the book. But remember, it's not just all about me talking in there. I do talk about a lot of other cultures, because the whole point is about culture. And I'm showing how other groups, looking at research done at Cambridge, wherever, Oxford, yeah, wherever, and other places, and looking at how they break it down. They're even saying that culture is biological. You got to think about it. How did man create culture? How did culture come about? What makes us create it? Why did we create it? What was driving us to do it?
Yeah.
There's so many levels to it. It's a beautiful thing. But once parents take up this book, and I wrote it very simple for them. Once they take up this book and start reading it, then they're going to pay attention to their children.
Okay. So
sorry, go ahead.
What you will need to do, and by the time this video goes up, I know you will have done it, you'll have your website up with all your articles. And you will also have a landing page where people can register if they want the book when it comes out. Okay?
Thank you.
You can either do it as you collect a mailing list for people who want the book, or you can do it so they pre-order it, you know.
That's good advice.
At a particular price. But you also need to start looking at taking this message on the road. Perhaps even, I mean, it's kind of urgent. Yeah, this has been going on for years. And yeah, you can probably say, oh, we can wait another 6 months, but you need to take the message on the road. Talk to organizations, clubs, churches, anywhere where people gather. You need to let people, you know, be aware of what's going on, and let people really understand what they need to do to turn things around. I know a number of parents are doing this, but we still have too many students that are falling through the cracks. Too many.
Too many. And we're not even talking about the school to prison pipeline yet. We didn't even go into that.
Well, that's another
And if you,
story,
I
isn't
don't
it?
know if you saw, I don't know if you saw a post by what's his name? Lord Simmons Woolery. Is it Woolery? Woolery?
Simon Woolley, you mean?
With Simon Woolley, yeah, Simon, not Simmons. He had a post last week which said that 25 that strip searches have gone up in schools by 25% since. No, sorry, not strip searches. There was one on strip searches that the Guardian and the BBC talked about, and I wrote a piece about it. And then there was Simon talked about that racist incidents in schools has gone up by 25% since 2023. So what we have to look at is that, come on, this thing has been going on for a very long time. So how are we protecting our kids? How are we nurturing them and preparing them to have a thick skin as they go through this world of facing discrimination, all the other things that Black children. Well, we have to remember that Black children, the reason why another reason why Black children underperform in comparison to other people is because they have a lot more stress. You understand me? They have a lot more stress. You might see that little child walking down the road, and to you, he's a kid, so you're not even thinking that he's stressed out. You know what I mean? Because he's stressed out because of maybe there's been an incident of a stabbing. He's been threatened at school. So he's now, bringing a knife, or he's, there's just like a racist incident occurred in a shop. He went to buy something and somebody followed him around. That impact on his self-esteem. He's constantly seeing negative portrayal of himself in media. You know what I mean? There's, all this stuff is going on. So how is he being cocooned? How is he being sheltered? How is he being protected? How are we doing that? And that's why we have to constantly have these conversations with our kids in the house and not leave it just to the school to do it. Right. So
it's very true. It's very true. And the negative things they see in the media definitely must play on the mind. If you think about, was it the Euros or the World Cup a few years ago, where some of our Black footballers missed the penalty? And the racism that they experienced, we all felt that as Black people. If you're harming one of our people, it's as if you're harming us. So we all felt it. And I remember this year when there was one of the matches where our guys, they scored all their penalties. They did really well. I remember seeing a message on social media. Oh, you can breathe easily, guys. No racism tomorrow.
You gotta laugh about it. Yeah.
That's how it affects us.
But ask yourself this question as well, Don. Why is it being banned? Why is one of Trump's agenda with Project 2025 is to ban the teaching of Black history in school? And remember, in America, we got all these different groups. Remember, it's not just Black history. You can learn at AP level, which is advanced placement. You can learn Oriental history. You can learn Asian history. You can learn, all kind of history.
Oh, so they're not banning those.
They're not banning those. They're just going after the Black history. You have to ask yourself, what did Black people do so that their history should not be taught in schools? So this is the question. And why? Because of the fact that Black history will empower Black students. And you have to look at the fact that when white students learn about the truth of what occurred in the past with the lynching, the tar and feathering, colonization, imperialism, all of these different things, they start to ask questions and they understand that it wasn't right. And nothing is wrong with that. They should know that. Don't we want to create a more equitable society? Isn't that what we're talking about each and every day, that we want to create a safe world for everyone? So in order for that to occur, you have to allow the truth out of the box. You've got to allow the truth to be told so that your daughter and your son will grow up to see Black people as human beings and also to work in partnership in order to create a better and brighter future for everyone.
So it seems to me that Saturday schools are vital, and I know that some of them are still around. Tutoring, getting a tutor is vital if the parents can afford it. Also, the parents need to introduce their children to cultural matters which will help to elevate the mind, help them to think carefully, give them new ideas. Maybe even take them to business events where they can see other people, Black people,
Black
with
business event,
businesses.
the
Yeah,
Black business event
take
that,
them
yeah.
there, let them get inspired.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and also be careful with who you introduce your children to.
Mm-hmm.
If it's possible to get like-minded people like yourself and their children together, it makes so much sense because iron sharpens iron. If you
Indeed.
know that there are some children who are bad company for your child, you got to find a way to wean them off a
Mm-hmm.
particular social set.
Indeed.
There's ways of doing it. You don't have to say, no, I don't want you seeing that child, and you don't give an explanation. You got to be able to sell it in a way like you're selling a deal. Yeah. And saying what the reward is going to be at the end.
Indeed.
You got to
Indeed.
find a way to
Mhm.
not necessarily ostracize certain people, but draw back a bit, spend
Yeah.
less time with them,
Yeah.
and be careful what they talk about with those other people,
Yeah.
because those are all things they need to do.
That's a big issue. We could talk all night long, you and me, about all this stuff. And I tell you, one of the things I've noticed is that, as you say, iron sharpens iron. But one of the things when I grew up in New York, in Harlem, we had a lot of, I had like, I would say in the neighborhood where I grew up, I would say maybe about 75% of the boys I went to school with dropped out of school,
Mm,
dropped out of school.
mm.
And they dropped out of school. Many of them went to sell drugs.
Oh God.
Many of them, because drugs, the way the drug dealers sold it to them was that it's quick money. You don't need to. If I go and sell a couple nickel bag of weeds or dime bags or whatever, right? And then at the end of my day, after just standing on a corner or whatever, you know what I mean? And I go back and a drug dealer is giving me $200 for the day,
Mm,
$300 for the day, $400, there's no incentive to go to school.
mm,
Know what I mean? So what we have here is the company. You got to be mindful because when your child go out there every day, there's other kids
who
who
influencing?
who influences them
Yes.
working for these people or working for these drug dealers who have been corrupted already. So now their only role or what they're going out there to do is to corrupt others because that's what has happened to them.
Mm,
So we have to remember that it is a treacherous environment. And I think one of the things that that's why it's so important to keep the child busy. And that's what the Asians do. Almost every single day. My son used to do about 6 hours of gymnastics every week.
mm,
And that's on top of swimming and tennis.
mm,
Right? And then not to mention the tutoring that he's getting at home and stuff like that keeps him busy, keeps him fit, keeps him focused. He's around. And then the people who were at the gymnastics, I met a woman who was a professor at UOB. I met another woman who was an accountant for big, you meet all sorts of people. They're all professionals. So,
mm,
all kids. So then we became friends and then we meet up and the kids are on a certain level. One of
mm,
the friends, he speak Italian, he's a
mm,
he's a mixed race boy from, mother's from Italy, father's from somewhere else. And you know what I mean? And, so it's like, you're putting them in that kind of circle where you're elevating them to perform at the highest level. And
mm,
I think, as I say, a lot of our young people, if you go down, we might talk about what's going on in the school system, but you go down to Aston, and that's where the larger majority of Black people live, and in Handsworth, and they're living in areas where the children are susceptible to gangs and gang
mm,
violence and knife crime. And that's the same thing in America. It's the same
mm,
exact thing. And that's why my book is about UK and America. and the school system of both systems
Oh, that's
that
good.
I
That's
worked in
good.
and seen for
That's
myself. Yeah. And I compared it too. So this is the reality. So we as parents now, we see a lot of Black parents stepping up now, especially our generation, and they're coming up and they're going, you know what? I'm going to even take my kid out of school. They're going to be homeschooled. And those homeschool kids, they do better than everybody else.
Oh, yeah.
They're getting PhDs at 16 and 21 and all that stuff.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
full potential comes out. It's crazy how the homeschooling, transform these kids. So I know that not all parents can do this, because in order for you to homeschool, one of the parents have to work and you got to be in a 2-parent household, because one of them has to go out there and work and the other one stays home and raise the kids. Right. So that's where that comes in. And that's why we have to kind of think differently about relationships even. Because, and that's why I say culture is so important, because when you come from a culture perspective, which is Asians do, when they say they want to get married, they don't just marry Tom, Dick, or Harry. Understand me? You know what I mean? And especially in India, over here, they still practice it. But if you're in India, China is the same thing.
Oh, really?
I was watching a video the other day on YouTube, where they're in one of the, I think it's Guangzhou, one of these Chinese city that's like one of the best, like have the highest middle class, like, they get together in a park. The grandparents, not even the parents, I think grandparents and parents, I don't know, grandparents, and they exchange details about their kids. And they go, yeah, my son is a doctor, and my daughter is this. And the other one go, yeah, I think that'll be a good match. They're hooking up their kids. Now, we allow them to go out there, right? And just go choose without any guidance and just bring home who they want to bring home. So the teaching has to be from a culture perspective, because guess what? We in Africa should do it. Whenever a man wants to marry a woman, still going on in South Africa, he has to pay the dowry. Got to bring the cows in, man. How many cows you got? You ain't gonna get my daughter like that. You know what I mean? How many cows can you bring and and give to the family, in not exchanging a daughter for a cow, but it's because the two families are now joined, and now the wealth. You know what I mean? It's about building that wealth and bring, all of these different things come in together. So we might be following a westernized way of doing things. But if we look at the West and we look at the divorce rate in the West, and if we look at all these different things, we can see that it's a system that's not necessarily working. On the surface, it looks good, but when you get down to it, they're divorcing left, right, and center, and more with white people, there's single parents. So there's a lot more single white women out there now than there used to be 50 years ago. A lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it shows you that the system is not working for them either. So that's where we have to start thinking outside of the box. And when you choose your partner, you want to make sure you choose somebody who is culturally aware, so that when you two get together, there's not going to be no clashing of how to raise that child, but a good sense of what we need to imbue into that child, so that child can become greater than the two of us, and continue to be successful. So that's what this book is about, essentially. I cover all of that, everything that you speak about. You don't have to buy the book no more. I'm just joking.
No, I think people need
Yeah.
to buy the book, and you need to do an audio version as well. Yeah?
Thank you. I will.
So people can listen to it
right.
while they're driving their cars or doing their housework.
You got to be my advisor. Trust me, because everything you're saying there, I'm going to have to come back to you and say, Don, because I'm not writing anything down now. But remind me of what you said to me over
Well,
there.
it's on the video. You'll just have to watch the video.
There you go. There you go. What am I thinking? Thank you very much.
Well, it's lovely talking to you. Thank you so
pleasure.
much for what you're doing. It's great that I can't remember how we came across each other on LinkedIn again, but you probably posted something really intelligent, and I thought, ooh, that's interesting. And then we started chatting. So well done. Keep doing what you're doing. And hopefully this will give you a wider audience. And as I say, collect that mailing list for people who want your book, okay?
I will. And thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. You take care.
A wonderful evening.